Has someone ever asked you to do something for them that you felt like was not your responsibility or your place? If so, I'm going to share with you the difference between a load and a burden, and why somebody's lack of preparation or lack of care should not turn into your emergency or your problem. So a load. A load is defined as a responsibility that someone else is personally liable for, right? So it's the things that you have to take care of. You should be taking care of on a day-to-day basis. You get up, you go to work. You got to do the work at your job to be able to keep your job. You come home, you got to be able to feed yourself, clothe yourself, pay your bills, put gas in your car. That is your load. Those are your responsibilities, the things that you should be doing as an individual to keep yourself going. Now, a burden is a crisis that catches you by surprise and adds on to your load. For example, you fall sick, somebody dies in your family, your car breaks down, or there's a natural disaster. That is a burden. And look, pay attention. The difference between those is that a load is something that is routine, something that everybody expects you to take care of yourself. It is something that you should be doing for yourself, holding yourself responsible and accountable. While a burden is something that happens by surprise. Nobody had control over it, right? But it is something that adds onto your load and makes it heavier. And I tell you this to say that it's okay to help people with their burdens, because there are things that happen in people's lives that cause them to fall back on their load, or not be able to handle their load as well. And being a good friend, good family member, good spouse, whatever it is, you're being a good person by serving that person and helping them carry that burden. Now, you are not to be helping people carry their loads, because a person's loads at the core is their responsibilities. It is their responsibilities. And to cut it short, to be frank, when you are helping somebody with their loads, you are enabling them. You are not helping them. You are giving them a crutch, because those are things. Those are not. How do you say? Those aren't events that happen out of nowhere. These are routine things that they should have control over. And I'm telling you now, if they're not taking care of those things now, they never will. You gotta let people take care of themselves. And look, I'm gonna give y'all some examples. Let's say a family member lost their job. Massive layoffs. Massive layoffs has been here around 2022, 2023. I'm expecting 2024 too. But your family member gets laid off from their job and they're short $200 for rent. That's a burden. You lending the person that money is you helping them carry that burden. Now let's flip the script. Let's say that same family member came and asked you for $200 because they mismanaged their money and they were spending it and buying whatever and doing whatever with whoever. And because they weren't being responsible, they're short $200. That's a load. That's a load. Another good example is, let's say you're in college or you have a job, but somebody asks you to help them with their project because they fell ill, or there was a family emergency. For example, like somebody died, or they fall very ill and they ask you to help them carry that project, like carry that burden, because it's a burden for them now, right? Them being sick is the burden. So they can't carry their load as well. And you decide to help. Now, let's say that same person asks you to help them with the project because they've been out partying all weekend, doing whatever with whoever. And now they're asking you to help them catch up on their work. That is not a burden. That is a load. I feel like you guys are understanding what I'm saying. So one last example, this right here, I asked my wife for this. I asked my wife to give me a good example, something for females, but I feel like this would go each way, male or female. But this is what she gave me. She told me, you asking your friend to call your spouse, your boyfriend, or your girlfriend because you haven't been able to contact them all day and you're scared that they might be missing or they're in danger. That is a burden, because this is something that you're not doing all the time. They usually answer their phones. You don't know what's going on, or something happened, or iMessage, whatever it is. You don't know what's happening. You ask, for your friend because they're friends with your spouse to call them, figure out where they're at to see if y'all can locate them. That's a burden. That's an emergency. Versus you asking your friend to call your spouse, your boyfriend or girlfriend, because you just want to make sure they aren't lying about where they told you where they're at. That's a load. It's your responsibility to trust your spouse. It's your responsibility to make sure they're not lying to you. It's your responsibility to make sure if you're in a good relationship or not. You're asking somebody else to hurt their relationship with a person to help please the anxiety or the insecurities in your head. That is a load. Now, I ain't even gonna go into that. But look, let me tell you what happens when you carry people's loads. When you decide to carry people's loads, the first thing that happens is that you start to burn out. You will start to burn out. There is no way that you are going to be able to take care of all the things you're supposed to be taking care of while taking care of somebody else's responsibilities. It's already hard enough for people to do the things that they need to do. Now you're going to ask somebody else, or you're going to take somebody else's responsibilities, the things that they should be doing. And then now other people are going to hold you accountable and responsible to that on top of what you already have to take care of. No, sir. No, sir. You're going to burn yourself out. There is no way. You see, because when you take on people's loads, like I said, a load is a responsibility. It's not something that's just once in a blue moon. A burden is something. It's an emergency. It's something that's popped about anywhere. It's something that isn't routine. Versus a load is something that is routine to that person's life. It is an individual responsibility. They have obligations to that specific thing that they should be taking care of. And if you decide to pick their slack up, you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to burn yourself out quick. The second thing that can happen when you decide to pick up somebody's load is that you're going to fall behind. You're going to fall behind on your own load, on your own responsibilities. I got a good example. I've heard this a lot of times, from older ladies, probably that have been divorced. They say that they left their husbands because their husbands were so focused on the career, on everything that was on the outside, and they neglected everything on the inside. They were taking care of other people's loads, other people's responsibilities, and neglecting what they had in the house, a wife and kids. And like I said, divorced women, telling me this, or I hear them say this. What does that let you know? Is that if you are taking care of other people's responsibilities, at some level, you are neglecting yours because you only have so much time in a day. Prioritizing is a must. You can't do everything. You don't have all the energy in the world and you don't have all the time in the world. So you have to prioritize. And if you are prioritizing other people's loads and responsibilities, you have to be neglecting yours to a certain extent. And a lot of people neglect them to the point to where they really hurt their way of life. Because if your wife and your kids are walking out, and listen, there's a lot of different examples. I'm just using this one. If your wife and kids are walking out on you, that means that you were neglecting them. That means that there was a responsibility that you had that you were not fulfilling if they are leaving you. If your wife is taking her kids and leaving you. And after I'm really talking to the guys here. Like I said, there's other good examples, but this is something that holds dear to my heart, something I'm learning early. Take care of mine. It's okay if somebody else is mad at me because I couldn't handle their responsibility. I don't care because that was their responsibility. I'd prefer for people not to be mad at me. For me, I'd prefer for people not to be mad at me because I was handling my responsibilities. I don't want people to be mad at me because I wasn't handling my responsibilities. If they're not around my responsibilities, get mad all you want to. I don't care nothing about that. That's your business. Be mad, stay mad. As a matter of fact, back up. I love you from distance. It's okay. You know what I'm saying? But I want to make sure I'm taking care of my responsibilities and my load because that is something that I am stuck with. That is the things that God has put into my life for me to steward well. And that's what I'm going to do. All right. The third thing that happens when you decide to take on somebody else's load is that I feel like it's a 99.99% chance that you will build resentment. You will build resentment. And let me tell you how I know that. I watch other people say they will do things for people that they probably should be doing themselves, and then complain about it behind closed doors and talk about it behind closed doors when it gets tough. I think that's called resentment. If you were not taking on that person's load to begin with, you wouldn't have nothing to complain about. I think, honestly, I think that should be a self-check thing. If you find yourself complaining about something too much, very often, you should ask yourself if this is something you should even be worried about or stressed about. If the answer is no, you should let it go. You should let it go. If you are complaining about helping somebody else, then you probably shouldn't be helping that person, especially if it's something that they should be taking care of, but you're trying to be quote unquote nice. You're not being nice. You're being an enabler. You're not being nice. You're giving them crutches. You're not teaching them how to walk. You're holding their hand. And the crazy thing is that because they know that somebody is holding their hand, they're never going to let go. They're going to hold on as tight as they can. And look, and guess what? Even if you decide to not hold their hand anymore, because you are enabling them, they know that somebody else is going to tell them yes. And they'll just keep asking until somebody says yes. The fourth thing that happens, and I already touched on this, is that you become an enabler. A lot of times when I talk to people or I hear people talking, they will, like I said, they will complain so much, and I can hear the resentment in their voice about them helping people out so much, and if they feel like it's imposing on their lives and things that they're doing. But it amazes me how they never look back at themselves and say, I'm part of the reason why they're able to do that. I've seen a lot of people, they'd rather just be like, why this person can't get themselves together? Why can't they do things the right way? Why can't they do this way, do that? And then after that, they go do the service or carry that load for the person while complaining at the same time. Well, let me tell you something, buddy, a gal. Part of the reason why they can't do the thing is because you're doing it for them. There's something that I used to do, and I still do it now. I do it now. Sometimes when you ask people for help, they don't teach you how to fish because they're too impatient, or either they think they're helping you by catching the fish for you. They don't teach you how to fish. They give you one. I'll ask somebody for some help. On something or whatever it is, this and that. And all of a sudden they're in the driver's seat. They're doing the thing that I just asked advice or help on for. I call that a natural enabler. Personally, I don't like that as a person because I like to take care of my own personal responsibilities, which is why I expect people to take care of their responsibilities. But if you catch yourself not teaching somebody how to fish, but just giving them one, throwing them a bone, you probably need to stop that. Because without you don't even know what you're doing, which is you're being an enabler. I know I'm sounding kind of tough right now, but it's the truth. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a very common thing. It's a very common thing for a lot of reasons. People feel like they're helping. Some people feel like they're helping. Some people feel like they're obligated. Some people feel like, whatever it is. Usually it's because they feel obligated. They feel guilty. That's why they feel obligated. Either they feel like they're doing, good. But at the front end, it looks like that. But on the back end, you're not solving anything. And the reason why you're not helping that person is because you cannot change people. People have to change themselves, and that requires them to take responsibilities for their own lives. You cannot make somebody happy. You cannot get somebody in shape. You cannot make somebody smarter. You can't make somebody better at their job, better at their relationships, better at their friendships. They have to do that for themselves. Right? The famous quote, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make a horse drink. No, you can't. You put your hand in the horse's mouth if you want to. It's going to bite it off. Do it if you want. It's going to bite it off. Now, guess what? Not only is the Horse not drinking water, you're down one hand. See how you operate with that. See how you operate with that. But look, I want to give you some simple steps, some very simple steps. And they're simple, but they're hard to do. It's always easier said than done. Some simple steps on how to avoid taking on somebody else's load. The first thing you could do is telling them no. Straight up telling them no. Somebody asks you to do something that you feel like is something that you shouldn't be doing, and it's something that they should be taking care of. Tell them no. It's only a 2-letter word, but it's very hard to say because we don't like to displease people. It's true. I don't like to displease people. It doesn't feel good when I say no, but it's something that has to be done, right? It's like you do the hard thing up front so it's easier on the back end versus you do the easy thing up front and it's harder on the back end, right? That resentment is the hard part. You falling back on your responsibilities is the hard part. It's easy to say yes and make that person feel good, but it's hard on the front end to say no. But guess what? On the back end, you're still able to handle your responsibilities. The person will respect you for it. They might not like it, but they respect you for it. And guess what? If they walk out your life, then guess what? That wasn't a real friend anyways. I would never consider somebody a real friend if they decided to cut me off or only talk to me when they need something. That ain't a friend. That's somebody that's using you. Somebody that's using me. It ain't a friend. That ain't a friend. You still love them. You're still gonna love them, but that ain't a friend. No. But when you tell them no, give them some advice. Tell them no with kindness also. I didn't say that. You got to say no with kindness. You know, you don't have to be yelling at people, making them feel bad about themselves or whatever. Say no with kindness. Say no with care. Say no with empathy. Don't make people feel bad about themselves. And then offer them advice. That's the least you could do. If you feel like you want to help, give them some advice. They might take it, they might not. Your advice might work, it might not, but it's something that you offered. You tried something. The second thing you could do is that you just call them out on it. Call them out. Call them out on what they're doing. Hey, I feel like you're asking me to do something for you that I feel like you should be doing for yourself. But I'm so busy. But this. But I got stuck in this. That. I'm sorry. That's something that sounds like a you problem. You should have been better prepared. You know that's something that you had to take care of. You know that bill was coming up. You knew this assignment was coming up. You knew this deadline was coming up. You know, you knew that this birthday was coming up, that Valentine's was coming up. Now you're asking me to go run out and do all these crazy things for you. That's not because you didn't care enough. You were putting your time into other things that weren't things that had nothing to do with you, or mismanaging your time, your money, your resources. I'm sorry. That is what you're doing. I'm not going to do that for you. I'm sorry. I love you, but I can't do it. And then you offer them some advice. And like I said before, they might take it, they might not. The third thing you could do, and I feel like this is something that a lot of people would do, because I feel like this is the easiest way to get yourself out of this, is love that person from a distance. Because like I said, telling people no and calling people out is very, very, very hard to do. It's not an easy thing to do. It is not an easy thing to do. But it's easier to love them from a distance. It's easier to I'm just not going to pick up your phone. I'm not going to pick up your phone call as much. No, I'm not going to hang out with you as much. We're not going to do all these things together. I'm not going to invite you over as much. I'm going to create a certain level of distance between us, so you don't feel as comfortable to ask me for these things that you should be taking care of yourself. That's something you can do. Love them from a distance. I love loving people from a distance. I love people, but I don't always like people. But I love them though. I love people. I love serving people, but it's not always easy serving people, especially when they're asking for unreasonable things. Sometimes it's just easier to love them from a distance. I remember one of the reasons when people ask me why me and my wife moved to Orlando. It's one of the, I use it interchangeably. One of the reasons, you could be the first or the second. I always say move away from family. Move away from family. And I tell them because, family will impede on our marriage. especially us being so young and so brand new. People just showing up to the house when they feel like it. So much opinions. People are going to be asking you for things all the time that probably isn't your responsibility, but because they feel like you're around, it's something you can help with. And look, like I said, it's hard to say no. And at some point, it's going to get tiring saying no. You're going to get in fights back and forth, arguments. It's easier to just move away. Because at that point, they can't ask you for something if you're not even there. Out of sight, out of mind, right? So guess what? Solve the problem saying no. Just create distance. Allow them from a distance. We visit them. We call them. We talk to them. We ain't ghosts. We function just fine. We're loving them from a distance. But look, that's all I wanted to share with you. I hope that helped somebody. I hope that made sense. I hope that kind of like broaden your perspective, and gave you something that you could use in the future, right? And just to circle back, the difference between a load and a burden. A load is your personal individual responsibilities, things that things you are obligated to, while a burden is a crisis, something that catches you by surprise, that makes your load heavier, right? Help people with their burdens. Help people with their burdens. Don't help people with their loads.